everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the differences between performing as an amateur actor versus performing as a professional actor. I'm sure for most people like myself, their first experience of performing was in an amateur context, whether that's performing in school shows or dance shows when you were a kid, performing in university societies, or as part of a local amateur dramatic society. So I thought I'd share with you the differences that I've found most noteworthy and how I've found those changes since graduating. Difference number one is show run lengths. Now I knew this would be a massive difference even before I went to drama school. Before I graduated, the longest run I'd ever done of a show was 5 or 6 performances. My first long run as a professional show was when I did Into the Woods in Manchester, the Christmas after I graduated, and that was 6 weeks, 8 shows a week. I think there were some performances where we had more than 8 shows, if I remember rightly. It was a while ago. The biggest difference I've found with that is that I remember with amateur shows with short runs, the end of the run was very emotionally fraught. Like everyone would be crying or everyone would be like really pumped, and it was just, emotions would run very high because you've rehearsed for so long and then you perform for such a short space of time, and it was just it was a lot. Whereas with professional shows, even if you're not ready for the show to be done yet because you're having a fun time and it was still a relatively short run, say like 3 or 4 weeks, it's not as emotional when it ends. In the same way, yes, you might be sad, especially if, you know, the run's been cut short or whatever, which can sometimes happen sadly. I feel like you've had enough time with it to be able to give it more of a fond farewell, I guess. It's very different doing a 6 show run. It's just a completely different atmosphere, really. So yeah, that's difference number 1. Difference number 2 is rehearsal time. So I actually did the maths, getting out my phone for the numbers, because I'm a nerd and I was kind of interested to see how the length of time versus the amount of hours kind of pans out, amateur versus professional. Here are the stats. So for an amateur show, typically, kind of going off what I did at uni societies in terms of rehearsal lengths, rehearsal time is usually between 3 to 6 months for an amateur show, I would say. Whereas with a professional show, rehearsals can be as little as 3 weeks. I actually auditioned for a show that had a rehearsal period of 9 days. Luckily I got another job so I didn't have to deal with that stress, because 9-day rehearsal period would have been stressful. But yeah, rehearsal times in professional shows are a lot shorter than in amateur shows. But obviously the amount of time you spend in rehearsal differs. So with an amateur show, you're looking at maybe 2-3 hours of rehearsal a day, 4 at a push, because you're typically going to be rehearsing in the evening, after school, after lectures, after work. You may also have Saturday rehearsals, particularly if it's like an amateur dramatic society and they're catering for people who do like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You might have Saturday rehearsals that are slightly longer, but you're not spending a full day in rehearsal. Whereas in professional rehearsals, you're rehearsing 5 days a week, 6 days a week, office hours, like 9 to 5, 10 to 6. That's your rehearsal time. So you're doing 8-hour days. So did the maths. With a professional show with 3 weeks rehearsal, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, you would be rehearsing for a total of 144 hours, which is quite a lot. For an amateur show with 12 weeks of rehearsal, so 3 months, 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, letting this amateur society give you your weekends, you are looking at 108 hours of rehearsal time total. So even though there's a longer rehearsal period for an amateur show, you're doing less hours. So the main difference with that is obviously with a professional show, rehearsal time is work time. Friday or Saturday evening when you finish rehearsal, you might go for a drink afterwards with your castmates or whatever, but when you're in the rehearsal room, that is work time. There's no kind of social aspect. Whereas with a professional show, particularly because you're rehearsing in the evening with people who, you know, they're doing it for the social aspect and the fun aspect. No one's getting paid. You're probably actually paying to be able to be in the society in the first place. You're there for the social aspect, for the fun. Therefore, rehearsals can also end up being kind of a social space. which, you know, has its pros and cons. It's nice to be more relaxed, but if there are some people who are like, apart from the whole pay aspect, I want a professional experience, and there are some people who are like chatting in rehearsal, then there can be a disconnect there. Also, the level of concentration during rehearsal, much more is demanded of you in a professional context. You've got to concentrate for 8 hours. Obviously you get breaks, but it's an 8-hour day that you've got to be focused on this thing, whereas in amateur dramatics rehearsals, only having to concentrate on one thing for 3 hours, it's not going to be as difficult. And also in that time, you're probably going to be working on one thing, right? So I remember being in shows at uni, and in one 3-hour rehearsal, you'll be doing one number. Obviously it'll be split up with like, the principals will learn their song, and then the ensemble will be learning the dance, and then you put it together, but you're doing one thing. Whereas in a full rehearsal, full day of rehearsal, you could be doing several things in that one day. And if you're in all of those things, that's a lot to remember and retain of different kind of aspects. So that's a difference as well. Difference number 3 is that it feels less competitive auditioning professionally versus auditioning as part of an amateur group. This is kind of personal opinion, but here's my reasoning on that. So firstly, obviously, there is a lot more competition professionally versus in amateur societies. You can get thousands and thousands of people auditioning, or even just submitting, not even getting to auditions for a part. There is literally more competition professionally. However, with professional auditions, yes, you do sometimes see the same faces, as in if there are people who are the same casting as you and their agents are putting them up for similar jobs because they're the right casting for it. There are times where you're going to cross paths at auditions. But the difference is you don't know those people necessarily. You get to recognise their faces and they're like, hi, hey again, how's it going? But you don't live in the same area, you don't live on the same campus, you don't have the same friends, you don't have lots of mutual friends, you don't go to the same social events. Even if you see them quite a lot at auditions, they're relative strangers, so you're just kind of like, cool, get on with my day, get on with my thing. Whereas in amateur dramatic societies, you're at the same school, you're at the same dance school, you're at the same uni, in the same club, you're in the same local area. You get a lot of big fishes in small ponds, in my experience. And then with all of that, there's the things like the friendship groups and the cliques that develop because, you know, there are some people who get along with each other better than others. You get people in the society who are joining production teams of shows, and they might be the kind of people who tend to cast their friends in things. And so you might be auditioning for something and feel that, well, am I even going to get cast because I know their friends are auditioning, and all of their friends could be all of these parts, so their friends are probably going to get the role rather than me. You know, there's all of that kind of political dynamic to it as well. And of course, in professional auditions, there's politics as well, to an extent, not to the same extent, but there's a reason that they say that this business is also about who you know, not how talented you are, which is the same in every business in my opinion, again to a degree. But that's more to do with reputation. If you get a reputation for being a diva, not being nice to work with, being rude, then you're not going to get the job. So it's more the other way of, you want people to know that you're nice to work with, so they're not going to not want to work with you. Whereas in amateur context, it's like, we're all friends, so we want to all be in a show together, because again, it's more of a social, fun thing rather than people wanting to put on a show. Who are the best people to put on this show? Who has the right skills? Who fits the character best? All of that stuff. And you see your competition in amateur dramatic societies. You know everyone who's auditioning, so you know who your competition is, you know who you're against, you know their skills because you're all in the same society, you've seen the other shows that society puts on, you've been in shows with that person before, so it's more tangible. Whereas with professional shows, even if there are hundreds of people auditioning, you don't know what all those people can do, they're all strangers to you, so you don't feel the competition and comparison as much, in my opinion. That's how I've felt since graduating, anyway. The final difference which I found that I love is that in professional shows there's so much more time for play, there's more time for discovery and exploration. The reason for this is not only do professionals work faster because A, it's our job, There's an expectation that we're able to deliver within this shortened rehearsal time that we have. But also, as professionals, we're more highly skilled. We've been to drama school, or we've been working in professional environments and improving our skill sets, or we've been reading materials or going to classes to hone our skills. So that means results that might take weeks and weeks in an amateur context to achieve, as professionals, we can get to that point quite quickly. So that gives you a lot more space to delve into kind of characters, to try out different things and all of that stuff. Also, the fact that we have longer runs means that you can discover so much during that run as well. With a short run of, let's say, 5 performances, the first 2, maybe even 3 performances, you're just getting used to being in front of an audience. And then you get to the end of that 3rd performance and you're like, all right, we're hitting our stride in front of an audience, and then you just have 2 shows left to go. Whereas with professional productions, you have so much longer. So once you've got used to being in front of an audience, you can actually take what you're getting from the audience and use that. Just in running things over and over, you discover things, you hear things that you didn't hear before, maybe in rehearsal. Also, the fact that often with professional productions, if they have the budget, you have previews as well. So things might be changing in previews, but again, that gives you more time to explore in front of an audience and change things as necessary with that kind of new character in the room. And also, I think as a professional actor, again, because you have that skill set, you're able to bring more to the table, assuming that you have a good director that, you know, sees actors as creators and not just lumps of Play-Doh to put on a stage. You can have that exploration and that dialogue with your director, so that broadens everything out more so. Whereas in amateur shows, I remember I was in a show once and I was playing this character, and I'd done all my character background work. Like, I knew who she was, I knew kind of her background, I knew the context that the play was set in, but as a music student at university, I didn't know anything about actioning, uniting, super objectives, things like that for that show. I had a director who was also a uni student, not a trained director, who couldn't help me. So I'd go to them being like, this feels weird, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I don't feel anything, what should I do? And they'd be like, well, your character is this person and they've gone through this thing. And I'd be like, well, I know that, so so not really explorative at all. Whereas having now graduated from drama school, and also in my first few jobs as well, because you're always learning on jobs, I now kind of know how to direct myself. I know how to make my own decisions. I can go to a director with options, with ideas, and then together we can create this thing. So it's a lot more playful. It feels a lot more curious in terms of you as the actor being able to delve. So those are some of the differences that I found most noteworthy since graduating. Obviously, there are loads of other differences that aren't specifically actor related. So if you want to hear about some of those, then let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to do that. If you liked this video, then I've got loads more giving advice about theatre, acting, kind of UK centric. So sorry if you're from anywhere else, but I live in the UK. So if you want to see more advice videos, then definitely check those out. You will see me in my next video. See you soon. Bye.